long story there. Thank you for waiting. Just stuff. So, anyway, I'm going to burn through chapter 3. And I realized it was probably chapter 3 and 4 that needed to be read. So, gonna read 3. Gonna read. I'll read 3. I'll read 4 and 5 tomorrow. Because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have to exit out of the stream again because I had like words. So many words. Anyway, so here's chapter 3 of Talisman of the Winds. I will read that. And then I'm going to say goodnight. And I'll be back tomorrow with 4 and 5. Barring any other weird technical. Well, that wasn't. This last thing wasn't technical. This was its own special thing. Anyway. Chapter 3. Old Palace of Ascos, Wenascos. The room was rather dingy. It had, at one time, been a chief servant's room, but it was in good repair, so the future lady of Ascos used it. They had managed some careful repairs to the main audience hall, and were repairing some other parts as time and materials were available. Lusomi Hescavoto, prospective lady of Ascos, opened the container for the second time in 1 week. Admiral restraint, she mocked herself. The box appeared to be an ordinary compact for face powder or the like, something that would disguise its real use in a cursory search. Any search beyond that, a mere test of magic, for instance, would reveal its true nature. The small mirror, which would ordinarily show her round face, snub nose, and something of her black curls, showed the face of the Thard wizard, who repeated the message she had memorized by now. By the time you are reading this, my dear girl, I shall be dead. I always hated it when he used to call me dear child. Why do I seem to be missing it now? I have, however, arranged for the talisman's delivery, dragooning it into our service, a very unlikely sort, an ox drover named Thoughtful. I apologize for the delay, but necessity was upon me, and there was no other choice to be had. The ox drover is unwilling, but will find himself having to move in that direction. How long will it be before he discovers that he is much better going off straight to Wenascos? I cannot say for sure. If you open this item in the starlit evening, over the map in the study you have so graciously furnished, a small figure will appear on the map, giving you some notion as to where he is at present. Do not do it too often or for too long, lest the magic be detected and traced to you. Wardish Garden guide you, my dear girl, and all those dedicated to our cause. The picture winked out, but on the map below her, she saw a man's figure, no taller than her thumb's breadth, but carefully depicted. A Batan, wasn't he? By the way he wore his hair? And yes, he did seem to be headed off in a direction to take him south of Wenascos. Destroyer's teeth! Are you really sure he's going to come this way, Rosario? She debated whether or not she should share this latest information with the leaders of the Ascos loyalists. And isn't that a fine title for the little band of hopefuls waiting for the wondrous weapon to arrive? Say that 5 times fast. And let them overthrow the man who, it seems, has eyes and ears everywhere? Not to mention having wizards of consummate power to deal death in fashions calculated to shake all but the most hardy soul. She recalled poor Zaharon being strangled to death, invisible hands squeezing his throat, invisible hands with no substance, but which could not be pried loose. She decided at last not to press on the information. She decided at last, not to pass on the information for that same reason. Narnash had eyes everywhere, and the fewer who knew the precise times and places and people, the better. No, Dathorio would have to know. The talisman was on his way to him. Ah, dapper little Dathorio Anavoto, whose aspirations to the crown were so strong as to be near visible when he was present. To wear the crown, he would have to marry her. To attain the crown, she would also need all the force she could muster. She had put off making specific promises, but the time would come when she must do what had to be done for her people. If only it were someone more personable. Stop it, Lucy. You know what has to be done. She closed the compact and tucked it away in a pocket discreetly hidden in the folds of her pale green gown. All her gowns had a pocket or two in them for tucking away little things that would not pull on the garment out of line. She contemplated sending some trusted person out to find this ox drover and lead him the rest of the way, but from what she understood and from what she had seen with her own eyes, the man was immensely stubborn. Sending someone to guide him along might be just the thing to send him into a heel-dragging mood. It was by no means an uncommon sight in the high-vaulted palace halls of the king of Wensaskos, Narnash Skalsland, fourth of that name, ruler of the dual kingdom of Wensaskos, breathed deeply and controlled his anger that could be displayed later when it better suited his purposes. Those present saw a sturdy man of middle years, blocky face, square-cut beard, wearing a leather corselet over green trousers and strong leather military boots. He looked again at the paper roll in his hand. Lusomi Haskavoto, a connection of the so-called old royal family of Askos? How is it that anyone of that name survives? His quietness announced his anger, and any other of the servants who stood before him would have quailed. Dr. Gobnash merely looked back at him. The doctor was a slight man, in sand-colored robes, and even his eyes were sand-brown color. A skull cap of maroon, or sometimes black, covered his thinning gray hair, and if he delighted in anything other than his studies, it was his ability to remain unseen in a background while people made foolish talk about the king, and then to make his presence known to the general consternation. Nor was camouflage his sole ability. When the wizard first came to work for Narnash, the king had attempted to discover what pressure would make the wizard afraid. All he had achieved, as he recalled, was 2 picked hand guards so broken in mind and spirit they were no longer fit for anything but stable chores, following the simplest instructions with blank eyes. My understanding, Highness, the doctor was always polite, is that most of the aristocratic families had made for them talismans of greater or lesser powers, the kinds of things that confer a general good luck. In the nature of things, however, not everyone can have good luck all the time, and before you ask, the battlefield, with all the blood and death and heartfelt desires to live and to kill, is a place where magic is not reliable, not even talismans. Indeed, a cast spell may well have an effect quite different, even opposite, to what the caster intended. However, the talisman is most often for the family, not any particular individual in the family. This means that while a family may be whittled down, it's very difficult to extirpate. Yep, I had problems with that yesterday too. Also highlighted. Extirpate one. By the time a family is cut down to 5 to 10 in number, the magic of the talisman is quite concentrated. If one thinks of the way a container of wine can be distilled to a much smaller amount with the quantity of the original wine increased in it, the matter is much the same. This is not a perfect analogy, but it will do. Thus, any move against such families results in incredible good fortune for the family involved. Assassins sometimes accidentally wounded themselves with their own poisoned weapons. The whole family may be out riding, hunting, or the like when troops descend on the household to arrest them. Fortunately, the effects of the talisman rarely spread to friends, retainers, and so on, so that with persistence we may well end with a few members of the last families creeping about the wilderness, staying alive through good fortune, but of no danger to us. The matter of concern, the doctor concluded, is not the woman and her family, but the actual message which was intercepted. Someone, ostensibly an ox drover, is coming to deliver a talisman to someone in the service of the group with which she is working. All very vague, and you have claimed to me that the third wizard is dead? He is, but he would not have used the last of his strength sending along the talisman if it were something none of his recipients could use. He was able to conceal his movements from me sufficiently that I do not know which of the wizards in Saragos he consulted. There are some whose works I could consider negligible, and some who might well produce something that could challenge me. But not defeat you? Narnish smiled, almost as though he had caught the wizard out in something. Defeat me? Unlikely. As long as my master continues to provide for my researches, I shall continue to become stronger. Why do you then not make a spell or talisman which will destroy the power of these family talismans? The sand-colored eyes opened only a trifle wider. Nothing that could be considered astonishment. No, that is not the best way to go. I told you how battles cause confusion of spells. Well, luck is one very chancy thing. Once a good luck talisman is in place, trying to cause bad luck to the bearer or bearers is almost certain to result in numerous unpredictable reactions. It is not a good notion, Highness. Just bear with me here. Told you, I'm editing while I'm doing this, so that's the thing that happens. I see. Suppose I find another wizard, one willing to make the attempt. Still no sign of alarm. In that case, Highness, would you please let me know when this wizard is about to go to work? I would prefer to be far away when he does so. King and magician looked at each other for a long while. Then the king said, "So then, doctor, away to your tower with your herbs and samples and stenches. Perhaps the next time you come here, you'll have answers instead of questions." Dr. Gobnesh bowed politely and backed out of the king's presence. Narnash awaited while his chamberlain escorted the group in, 4 men dressed as merchants in somber colors. While the king would not recognize every man in his kingdom, he had seen these 4 often enough. He frowned at them and spoke before the chamberlain could introduce them. It was a breach of protocol, but none in the kingdom, man, woman, child, or Eshti of the deep woods, would chide King Narnish. "A request for relief from the port imposts, is it? Well, is it? Will you all stand there like doorposts? Ah, someone has a tongue, though a feeble one. This makes 4 times, to my recollection, in the past 3 years, that the same request has been made. And once again, for the same reasons as before, I must turn it down. And you know what these reasons are, don't you? Yes, you bob your heads like that, and take care you don't bob them off. You all trade with Ascos, do you not? Oh, don't trouble to deny it. You and I know better. And you will tell me that without trade to the Ascos, your businesses will suffer. And I tell you that the Ascos have yet to accept judgment on the battlefield, rendered so long ago, and are sneaking around in the skulking fashion of that lot, making surreptitious sedition against their rightful masters. So, all commerce to the lands of Ascos serves to support them. Rather than have customs posts along every trail to the interior, I collect taxes at the ports and decorate the harbor fortifications with heads of any who try to slip cargoes ashore other than through those cities with the appropriate charter. I doubt that all commerce with the Ascos will cease, for all your complaining. But as they discover that goods cost more, they will be pressed to work harder at earning their bread, and thus have little energy left to attempt to overthrow their true rulers. No, the harbor imposts remain. Good day, gentlemen. It would require much more hardy constitution than any of the merchants possessed, even to make the attempt to argue farther with Narnesh once he had dismissed them. They left not even attempting to act other than defeated. The king looked at the chamberlain, who gave the signal for the next deputation to come in. The first strange thing was that the ordinary boulder, on the other side, was silver, shot with copper streaks. Thakkel looked at it, then put a hand to his knife to scrape off a bit. Shapik Kalish grasped his arm in a steel grip and said, "Come on, O wandering ox drover with the eye for riches. One does not stop within the hidden ways, for time flows strangely in some of these places. No, not even a coin's worth, though it might seem cruel. There are worse things than having to pass by riches without extending a hand to make oneself less poor. Now come, accept for the moment that I know whereof I speak. Think, why would a merchant pass such a thing if it were not frightfully dangerous to stop?" Which statement caused Thakkel to think, and to come along for the first grudging step. By the second step, things had altered altogether. The silver rock was gone. To their right stood a thick forest, to their left a rolling plain, and a large stone building in the distance, tall and turreted, while in the foreground a man and a woman, strangely but richly dressed, met in the center of a small bridge and kissed if it was the last kiss on earth. A few more steps, and through the forest. Nope. A few more steps, and, though the forest was still on their right, on the left was a grassy plain where two armies clashed in combat. The armies 100 yards away, and a long-speared phalanx on one side held the flank firm, while on the other the cavalry rushing around to deal the final blow to the exposed enemy wing. Thakkel never had paid much attention to soldiers and their equipment, but one thing he noticed was the cavalry did not use stirrups. That seemed strange. Didn't everyone use stirrups to help keep their seat on a horse? Yet these men were riding like mad into a fight, nothing holding them on the horses' backs except, it seemed, fervent good wishes. He was quite happy to take a few steps to change the scene again. Soldiers in battle were a dangerous thing, and they might prove dangerous to anyone, even a small merchant, his mule, and a bewildered ox drover. He found himself wondering if this step were such a good notion. The forest, straggly and thin, was still to their right. To their left was a wide, sandy expanse. In the sky was a line of what he thought were ducks. Then he realized they were farther away than they first seemed, and they were not birds. Dragons! Oh yes, for certain. But I will not stop here to discuss with you the whys and wherefores of what may or may not be encountered in the hidden ways. I assure you, Before we are done, we will see many strange sights, and dragons will be only one of a host of others. Keep walking, if you please. Thakkel complied willingly. That night, the things that he had seen that day had overwhelmed Thakkel. Oh boy. So many that's in one sentence. Give me a minute here. That night, the things he had seen that day had so overwhelmed Thakkel that he was unsure where to begin. When Shapakalish took out a little pyramidal, I don't know if that's actually a word, pyramidal object, and folded down its sides until it glowed with warmth and light. It seemed a piece of a piece with the day's travel. Yeah, that whole paragraph needs to be rewritten. Like I said, this is a first draft. It needs work. What do you know of the things we've seen today? Do you know anything of them? Or were they merely things you passed by, unable to guess what they might mean? Ah, my Oxdrover friend, you look for meaning, for explanations? Let me tell you bluntly that there are none, or at least very few, regarding what might be in the hidden ways. I, and others of my sort, know how to pass through them, even develop spells or talismans to enable them to travel there. But because of the way of time moves therein, depending on places traveled to, that it is very difficult to make any study. For by the time you have gathered your data, your kingdoms and empires on the outside would have risen and fallen. Then the city in which you lived might well have been destroyed. So you would have all this information, but nothing to do with it. The wisest say that one goes through the other worlds which have grown up very differently from this one. And when one passes through them, one passes through at different moments in their history, sometimes even different lands and places. But how do you tell where you're going to come out? A good question. For those of us born with the ability to walk the hidden ways, it is a matter of having a special sense of direction, so that we know of if we go this way, we'll come out somewhere in this direction from the place in this world where we began. Some of us can even see our way to coming out in a very particular place, as narrow, as we say, 3 feet. No fear of coming out within a rock or a tree or a wall? Shapakalish shook his head. Certain young persons, for sheer devilment of it, have attempted such things. They always came out on the surface of the rock, or up in the branches of the tree. It appears that there is something in the nature of the hidden ways which forbids two objects to be in one place at one time. And were you full of devilment when you were a young person? I must admit that I was, until I grew older and more philosophical in habit. Thakkel mustered a small grin over that. How far have we come? That is, from where we started this morning. Oh, probably a trifle more than a day's travel. And would there be a town or village nearby? Shapakalish considered. Well, yes, there is Hadrang to the south. It is barely a hamlet. Filthy inn at a crossroad with a few houses grouped around. The place has a bad reputation. I never go there except when directly commissioned, and at those times I keep a wary eye on myself and my possessions. You'd be better off to accept my company another day or two. In what direction have we been traveling? Towards Wenzaskos? Generally, yes, though I expect to pass through near the interior border, coming nowhere near to the capital itself. You have an errand there? which question reminded Thakkel of his determination to avoid Wensaskos and the bad luck dogging his efforts. "I have no intention of going near the place," he stated, and as he spoke he knew he was willful being stubborn, sticking to a decision made in the heat of emotion. Why not go there, deliver the thing hanging around his neck, and go his way from there? "You're certain?" Questioning his decision only made it more firm. "Very certain. I'll rot before I see that country." Shepakalish raised his thick eyebrows. "Best be careful of the things you swear and vow, young Thakkel. One can make trouble for oneself that way. If you are intent on going to Hudrang, remember my warnings. Will you at least avail yourself of my company overnight? After dark is scarce the best time to arrive at the most highly esteemed town." The sense in that was too much for any stubborn reaction from Thakkel. He grinned again. "So long as the conversation does not stray to extreme philosophical depths." The little trader took 2 flat bread cakes and leaned them against one side of the shining pyramid, then took 2 pieces of meat and leaned them against the other side. He looked up at Thakkel. "A useful device I acquired in my travels. Were they a little easier to produce, I could take a dozen and sell them to various kings and rulers, then retire from the business of scrambling along a hidden ways for a bit of gold here and a bit of silver there, and a handful of coppers elsewhere." He produced a full ale skin and handed it over. "But here, try a bit of this. It's an ale I picked up the other day. No magic in it, save in so far as the craft of a beer master brewer might be considered magic." When Thakkel woke the next morning... give me 1 minute here. When Thakkel woke the next morning, he felt pleasantly rested and realized suddenly that sometime in the previous day his ankle had ceased hurting because he had been moving toward Wensaskos. He scowled. If it started hurting again this evening, he would know the cause. Would he give in and go to Wensaskos? That remained to be seen. He heard his host having his morning discussion with the mule and got up to lend a hand. Mules were nothing like oxen, but they were both animals, and he'd picked up here and there a few tricks for dealing with various sorts of beasts of burden. When they were done, Shepakalish looked at Thakkel. "The Lady of Praises has spoken to me concerning you. She wishes me to offer you what help I can. Take this." He held out a small silver coin with a strange inscription on it. "Of itself it is of little use. Carry it with you for 7 days and you will no longer need it, for the bond will have been formed. If you need my help, simply say these words: Karda ezusht lavagonli." It required 3 attempts for Thakkel to achieve a pronunciation that suited the little man. That accomplished, Shepakalish said, "I do not promise that I shall come hurtling out of thin air to rescue you, but wherever I am, I will endeavor to come to you. I trust you will not use it foolishly. If you are unable to pay your gambling debts, and you call me to the rescue, I shall be annoyed." "For 7 days, you say? And if I get into trouble after that time?" No. Carry the thing for 7 days. After that, if you lose it or drop it or anything else, the bond is formed. The bond will last for longer than you're likely to need it. And don't attempt to spend it or gamble it away. There is a seeming on it, so that to the usual eye, I believe that should be casual. It seems to be no more than a lead token. And dropping it on a wine shop counter would only cause trouble for you. The sort that, while I could get you out of it, would leave me very annoyed afterward. Thakkel looked from the coin to the merchant, and with suspicion growing in him. "There's nothing in this that requires me to go to Wensaskos, is there?" Shipakela shrugged. Wherever you go, the lady has asked me to help you. She has set no limit or restriction on it. Get yourself taken by bandits to the far side of the world. Speak the words, and I will come when I can. Powerful magic, then, these words. Not in themselves. They are merely an adaptation of the first words of an old epic, which goes, as best your language can put it, King Silversword went riding out upon a sunlit day. He stopped. Besides, philosophy, ancient epics are another field of great interest for me. With little encouragement, I could stand here and recite many epics in many versions and give some learned expositions as to the differences and the variations, as to how the differences in versions came about. But you will be wishing to get on your way to the fascinating town of Hodrang, and I have many miles to go to make my deliveries. And even the wisest and most philosophical of us must eat. A good day to you, and thank you for helping me make the mule understand the philosophy and nature of things this morning. And that is chapter 3. So thank you for joining me tonight, and I will talk to you tomorrow, because that is the new norm for me right now. Is every night will be another little Twitch night and another chapter, and then from there there's many novels, so I can do this for quite a while. You might be interrupted with the occasional Dungeons and Dragons, because that's also what I'm doing, but for now, definitely these are pretty easy to do. I mean, relatively easy to do. Bear with me in my stumbling words, because that is me practicing and getting used to it and trying to build up the talking and being engaging. So I hope I was somewhat engaging for you tonight, and we'll try again tomorrow night. I will talk to you then. Thank you for popping in.